What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping, if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, please hit that subscribe button and notification button. Really helps us out, and then it, brings us up in your the AI, as we'll get into. Let you know to check out the latest episodes. So like this one I got going on right now with an old friend, special guest, the storytelling wizard himself, Mr. John Tole. How you doing, John?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Glad we got the technical stuff figured out. You have to let me know though when the keep checking the battery. Let me know if we're on a timer or anything.
Oh, no.
But
I think I'm pretty sure we got enough juice here to be able to pull this off. And I apologize for all of our technical difficulties we had. Considering I make dumb content all day, it sucks that we have to do something as simple as this and I can't get it to work.
yeah, I feel bad that like StreamYard wasn't like working for you, but oh
Because they're
well.
no, I'm just kidding.
They could be. I don't know.
Who knows?
It's big tech, and the buddy of mine that referred me to this, Chris Aiken, is very anti-commie too. So I don't think he'd
Okay.
lead me astray. Um,
Yeah.
but hey, before we get into all that stuff, I'd like to go back and do like a little timeline story. And you
Sure.
got quite a history here in Cleveland. So, but as a kid, originally, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh God. I wanted to. You know what? I only had one visible dream would be, remember, like every year Bill Murray would walk on the 18th hole at Pebble Beach at the Pro-Am, and then whether or not he was playing well or not, they were like, that's Bill Murray and he's playing golf on a weekday and he doesn't
Yeah.
really have to do anything. That's kind of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had no other dream other than that. When I got into stand up, the only dream I had was, because I was such a Greg Giraldo mark, I was like, well, he made his first album at Comedy Works. I would like to do that. I didn't really have any like career aspirations or anything. It was just kind of like, oh, well, I'm an artist, I make music. Now I've morphed my music into stand up. It's all the same thing. And so now I just make albums. But
Yeah.
I didn't really have any and probably to the detriment of what my future is going to look like, probably dying of diabetes in the woods without a foot, with no health insurance. I probably should have planned ahead better.
Well, like going back to like when we met and when I knew you, you were involved in a lot of local bands here in Cleveland. But like, when was it that you first like started feeling like the call to play music?
I mean, growing up, I got my first Kiss record in '76 at the age of 5. So, I got Rock and Roll Over, and that was it. That was the end. For whatever reason, my parents let me have rock records way too young, and so I started. I'm 5. I'm listening to Kiss. By the time I get into middle school, it's Motorhead, Maiden. But I'm a jock. I'm playing baseball, 24/7. I've never picked up a guitar. I didn't really get a guitar even until my freshman year of college, and I didn't play in a band, probably until '94. And then when I joined OLC, that was only the third band I had ever been in. So I've just
Well,
self-taught. And I don't know what it was that just drove me, probably just being a ham and just wanting to get on stage and, be an idiot. Typical, dude in his 20s, unchecked ego nonsense.
yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about when you first started playing in bands. Like, what band? What was your first band before OLC came along?
I was in a thrash brand. I was in a thrash band called Suppressed Aggression. How about that for a name? Um, we made a demo, and then some of the members like flamed out. They just couldn't. You know how musicians are. They just couldn't keep it together. And then me and the singer ended up starting Lockjaw 44, And then from Lockjaw 44 is how I, was started playing hardcore shows, or playing live at all, really anywhere. And then from that, got the opportunity to be in OLC.
Yeah, I forgot. That's right, about Lockjaw, because that was like that's how you got the nickname John Lockjaw. Then from
Right.
that, right? Okay, and then so you played with them, and where were they? Was this all in the Cleveland area?
My first bands, no, they were all from the Bay Area in NorCal. So it's like, I mean, I guess that's another reason why I was, why I got into music, is because I was blessed to, not only be just a thrash nerd, but then to also grow up in the Bay Area, which was the epitome of where thrash nerds lived. It's all we did. It's like I grew up in a town. When I was in high school, I delivered a pizza to the singer of Exodus's house. Like
Nice.
I would see Chuck Billy at the mall, at the batting cage. And then so it's like, and then, just growing up, seeing everybody at shows. And then by the time you start doing music and getting bands, you already know everybody in the whole scene anyways.
Nice. So, like, what ended up then bringing you from the Bay Area to Cleveland, Ohio?
The One Life crew needed a bass player, and after hearing Crime Ridden, I was like, oh well, this is, I always say that Blaze is a riff genius.
Oh,
And so it's like, that was one of those albums when it came out. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is exactly when I envision hardcore and what hardcore sounds like, and capturing energy and just the sheer economy of the riffs and just the way Blaze wrote and his song structures and everything. I was hooked. And so when I got the opportunity to come play, I was like, oh, immediately, yeah, of course, I would love to do this. I probably should have, kicked the tires of the band a little better before I decided to join on, as far as everybody, how they got along, which they didn't.
yeah.
I found out that after I had already moved to Cleveland and
You moved your whole
uprooted
life over here.
but yeah, but that's fine. It gave me the opportunity to start Pitboss and
Yeah, yeah,
move on to the next and move on to the next opportunity.
yeah, yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit about your time though with One Life Crew,
Yeah. Do I
because
apologize now or later?
no, man, it's all good on my end. This is still a free broadcast. Where people can have differing opinions and not get like shut down. So,
Yeah.
um, but I mean, so you came out, and like you said, the music. I mean, it was just like Blaze's writing and everything. It was just like, who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
Well,
But
yeah, you're also, it's also, you're in the legacy of Confront.
yeah,
You're in the legacy of Cleveland Straight Edge that has a super long lineage. I'm like, you're seeing, for as awesome as Bay Area was for thrash growing up. I mean, Cleveland hardcore, all going all the way back to Outface and every project that Urba ever touched. I mean, Cleveland's hardcore legacy is unmatched. It's on par with DC, New York, Boston. It's an equal in my mind, anyways.
no, I agree. I don't think it gets enough credit that it deserves. A lot of times, gets definitely, you know, drowned out by like the bigger cities and stuff. But our hardcore scene, for sure, the history.
Well, I mean,
Is
just
crazy.
as a kid, and I, like being a kid and going to like the Stone in San Francisco, the Omni in Oakland, to go to Gilman or Ruthie's, it was like there was a certain energy for underground punk shows or hardcore metal thrash that the first time, I had already been, because I went to college in Columbus. So I was going to Cleveland shows, in what, 93, 94. So I already knew like what the energy was in Cleveland, like walking into Peabody's as someone not even ever have been in a band, and then to walk in, to Peabody's as a member of OLC, like the energy in that room was just bonkers. And so it's a lot of people wonder, what it takes to make an amazing scene, from the bands to the musicians to all that. It's really about the energy in the room. And all those freaking venues, the Grog Shop, freaking Fantasy. I don't know what's around today, but the energy in that was just next level. And just to be a part of that, in any capacity, whether if it was being in Ringworm or doing One Life, it was like Cleveland's energy is unmatched.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's like we Peabody's is no longer, the Fantasy is no longer, you know. But man, I mean, those are some memories. But I mean, the music with One Life Crew was on another level. But then you got to talk about then the infamy, I guess, that came with it, the lyrical content, the storytelling. A lot of people weren't ready for some of that, and today there'd be meltdowns.
Yeah, well, look, there were meltdowns before that band ever existed. There were meltdowns while the band existed, and there are still meltdowns today. And so there will always be people who push a creative envelope, and then there will always be a reactionary response, which is either you're either truthfully wounding someone to the pit of their soul, or this is just the next thing for them to latch on and hate today because they need something to latch on and hate today because they're running out of things. It's unfortunately the call out culture, the cancel culture for the decades that it's been running, is a cannibalistic thing. They can only run out of so much stuff to be mad at, or eventually they'll just start being mad at each other and then circle the drain.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And then, so like with your time with One Life Crew, like what are some of your favorite memories when you were playing with them?
I mean, to be honest, God, we're talking late 80s. I here's It's funny. I rarely think about those days. I can distinctly remember at maybe this club called the Mosquito, which was in Detroit. And it was before I knew the dudes in Cola's life, or I didn't know anybody in Detroit for that matter. And we were going to play. And I remember kind of just like setting our gear up, and I had my back turned to the audience, and I just kind of peeked out at what was happening in the room. And every tough dude in Detroit is in a semicircle, like half circling the stage with their arms folded. And remember looking at Blaze, and I was like, man, this doesn't seem good. And then we played, and they were cool as shit. Everything was fine, and we left. But the energy in the room of like, I was so used to just growing up, going to shows and having fun. Now I'm in this band. We're playing Cleveland. Everything's great. Then you go out of town, and you're like, oh, I don't know any of these dudes. And then like the energy in the room was like, yikes, this could go south real quick. But it didn't. And then because they just probably wanted to know what we were, truly all about. Is this just wrestling? Is this, are you guys really into the music? I'm sure they were feeling us out as much as anything.
Yeah. And like, I mean, this was before social media where, rumors and stories and, there's more power to canceling and stuff like that. But I mean, stories flew, really quick back then about that band, and there was a lot of shit talking coming from all sides. So I could see why there'd be some like nervousness playing out of town and whatever. But like, what do you think made the band and the name so like polarizing?
I just think that I'm not exactly, if it was just we need a, I'll get into philosophy here if you'd like. I would say if anybody wants to get into learning what the scapegoat theory is, to read Rene Girard. He's a professor out of Stanford, and he explains, what the nature of scapegoating and how it's been used throughout human history. And so, and in this world that, in you take the hardcore scene for that matter, right? And what you do is you build up one entity as a scapegoat, and then you take down the scapegoat, and then in the taking down of the scapegoat relieves all of the social ills of the whole scene. So if you have one band that has run afoul of the whole thing, then the whole scene can all join together and say, this is bad. Then it gets canceled. You get a win there, and then it just resets, and then they create a new enemy. And that's just the nature of scapegoating in general.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that, but there also seemed like a lot of, almost, parallels our times today. There's a lot of the people that were like about the message, and we're like, God, I'm glad people are finally saying, what I feel, speaking for our group or whatever.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I always just from I can listen to Deicide and not run out and burn a cross in my forehead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
but then in the same respect, there are people in great bands with great lyrics, and those lyrics are their 100% truth as a biography, as a world outlook. And as far as art goes, that's as equally valid as someone creating a persona and then, tapping into the id of, whatever if you want to call OLC's lyrics as nationalist or isolationist, non-interventionist style lyrics, taken to the ultimate level of absurdity. As far as art goes, that's all the same. It's all the same gimmick. It all fits in the same frame. But for the folks who do it and this is their life and what they're saying is true, the other side doing it as a gimmick is anathema. It's not. It doesn't make sense for them. So,
Yeah.
But
So
but you have to look at what people were experiencing in the 90s is no different than what we're experiencing now. Is that there is, without a doubt, an overlooked center of this country, a 70 to 80% of the blue collar, poor to working to middle class American who has absolutely no representation in society. And so, in that respect, those lyrics then, tapped into that. Nothing's changed. Just that if you thought the American worker didn't have any voice in the 90s, it's even less now. And so what we're seeing is that the push, the push for globalization, as you push one way for globalization, the return swing the other way is populism, is nationalism, is love of country, is very Main Street politics. And so that's the reason we got Trump in 2016. That's the reason we'll probably get another bite at the Trump apple in 24, or DeSantis.
Yeah,
Or
I
Hillary.
agree.
I see a nightmare scenario where fucking Hillary wins in 2024.
Oh, we're done.
Do you know what the
Yeah.
worst part? I'll tell you know what the worst part of Hillary winning in 2024? It would being murdered in a FEMA camp using a solar powered guillotine.
Exactly. It
would take 69 chops at your neck to finally cut your head off with a solar powered guillotine.
Yeah. That has to be run on, well, no, if they used a windmill, that would be,
right.
But oh man, yeah, I want to get in. I definitely want to get into like some current events with you and stuff. But
my ADD is super bad. So if I jump around and stuff, I just apologize. That's just my brain for the reason I do stand up is just like whatever pops in my head goes. And so sometimes I get off tangent. So just, reel me back in as needed.
No problem. So, and then you mentioned Pitboss, after I guess the wheel fell off for you with OLC.
Right.
Uh, and you started doing Pitboss. Talk about like what that band was about for you and putting that together.
I mean, it was the absurdity that I loved of OLC, but then musically, I was, I'm not as great of a player as Blaze was, but as far as song structure and old school thrash and crossover and stuff, that's what I grew up on. And so Pitboss kind of moved more towards a crossover, and just because I can't play guitar very well. But I always like the idea of like, oh, well, this song is just going to have one riff. We're going to play it 3 different ways and then it's done. And I don't have to think about it. Like the first time that Danny and I got together and made Pitboss, we made 7 songs in one day.
Nice.
Yeah. And so now it's like, when you're really new at making music, you don't have like a disruptive editing process where you're like, oh, this sucks. Just whatever you're making is like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And now I've made over 30 records. And so it's like, now if I sit down and pick up my guitar, I want to hang myself with the chord because I hate my riffs.
Now, that band had some success here in Cleveland as well, and you were able to talk our mutual friend Frank Novinek from actually playing guitar into being like a one of the singers of the band. How were you able to do that?
Just actually, okay, the first time before I moved to Cleveland, I flew out to do a weekend. It was like a post-Thanksgiving weekend in '96 with OLC. And I remember I got picked up at the airport by Steve, and I think we went to Frank's apartment first. And so literally within 30 minutes of landing, I'm in a conversation with Steve and James and Frank. And so like these are the first 3 people I meet in Cleveland. And so now it's like I have the longest history with them. And so for Frank, it's like, I'm doing Pitboss. I want the energy to be the NWO. It's the NWO Wolf Pack. It's on stage banter and shit talking. I love multiple singers, whether if it's Path or if it was, what was that straight edge band out of Erie? I forget the Christian band, but any band, or Scarhead for that matter, anybody who had two front people, I always thought that was better because from a crowd reaction standpoint, if you have more than one microphone to sing along with in the music, then that just creates more chaos and more energy up front. And that's the key to making a show great, because it's like the back of the room always feeds off that.
Yeah. I love the NWO reference and stuff too.
No, it gets that
was hot around that time.
Well, but it's important to like it's one thing. It's like I can think about it now and look back on it. But if you look at what the entertainment that was happening, at least the entertainment that I was taking in at the time, was that over the top WCW, it was WWF at the time, and those competing factions, ECW, RVD, it's like that energy was so dope. And the energy that they had in independent wrestling was the same energy that we had in music. And it's the same energy that we have now in stand-up. And so it's like, I guess I've always been after that level of like crowd pop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And then you mentioned, we were trying, I'm drawing a blank too, the Christian band in Erie, but I remember
it wasn't Disciple. It was Disciple's other band.
Yeah, I don't remember who that band was, but I remember that at one point you played in a Christian hardcore band as well.
Right.
Was Through It All.
Yeah, yeah. Through It All is, if you want to, that's, I Through It All's up on what it's up on, I think you can find it on YouTube, and it's for sure on Spotify. And that is absolute, that is war zone worship. As far as writing riffs that were definitely in the realm of Warzone, then that was for sure uh that what I was going for with that. And then after
Yeah.
that I got into Point of Recognition, which was like a straight up metalcore band.
Yeah, I
And then I
remember with
actually,
Through It All, you played a show for me at that No Excuses in North Olmsted at
yeah,
one point. And I mean, there's, you know how the scene is and how people are. People are like, oh, what, what's he capitalizing on the Christian thing or whatever, But what was kind of like behind you getting involved with that band?
oh, as far as like what, like coming to faith, or just getting as coming into just meeting those musicians?
Well, yeah, both.
Well, I mean, I guess one has to come. Actually, obviously, one has to come before the other. You realize that to live a anchorless, rudderless existence isn't truly fulfilling. Nor is there any true truth in what's happening. And so, I guess at that time, what, 2000, I watched my whole entire life, relationship, apartment, job, possessions gone. So you go from all systems go, everything's good, to absolute zero. And in that zero is just this vacuum where anything could occupy that space. It could be drugs or alcohol, it could be music, it could be something positive, exercise, it could be something negative, self-hatred, and just, I always grew up Catholic. And so
Yeah.
I just had a crisis of faith, and then had, that answered. So, and then what do you do then with that information, of that ground floor acceptance of, all things as they are, and then
Yeah.
still to be able to write good music. And so now I'm just creating from a different place, for a different reason, still capturing the energy though.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you shared that too, because I mean, back then when I booked the show, I was raised Catholic too, and that was I was an altar boy the whole 9 yards, but I was far from having a relationship with God and faith. And I mean, it's been so long since we talked, but before I retired from the military, I had my last deployment in 2008, and I got two daughters now and everything. So it's like a lot
Oh,
of
that's
life.
awesome.
Thanks, man. So a lot of things were changing in my life, but I was running hard in the music scene, and just like got caught up in a lot of, addiction and alcoholism and the sex and all that stuff. And um, basically came home and like hit a bottom, man. I had a couple friends that came home in flag draped coffins and just gave me that moment of clarity to start thinking like, if that's me, what will my daughters remember of me and stuff. So I came
Right.
home. I ended up getting sober and saved back in 2009, and I've been
Oh, that's awesome.
just celebrated 13 years sober, and
Oh, that's killer.
involved in a Christian recovery group, and more involved in my church and everything now. But but still wanting to, being a fan of music and creating, like you said,
Hmm.
so that's why I'm doing this podcast, and I'm just, now I can be open about things, and it's not like, ooh, this is you know taboo to talk about, so
Right.
I'm glad you shared that with me. So then after Through It All, though, you said, what was it, Point of Recognition was the next band?
Yeah, we did Point, and then we had a couple tours with them. We had some membership changes. Two of our members left to form As They Lay Dying. So,
Okay.
and then And then at that point, the band stopped doing, really anything. I connected with my buddy Jonathan, who was from the band Bomb Threat from Maryland. The first show that OLC that I ever played with OLC was it was in Maryland with Coming Correct and Bomb Threat. And so at that show, I get to meet Rick, and then I also met Jonathan from Bomb Threat, and then we just were always friends from '96 on. And then I was like, hey, I would like to do an SOD styled crossover thrash band. And what do you think about that? And then basically he wrote all the music, and then he put it on a CD and sent it to California, and then I did the vocals and sent it back. And the next thing we know, we had a project.
And around this time, is this when you moved back to California then, or?
Yeah, so I moved back. I was in California from like 2001 probably till 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then like when did so was this your final like band before comedy? When did comedy come into the picture for you?
I first stepped on stage. I tried an open mic in 2002 at the La Jolla Comedy Store. I was like, oh, I would like to try this. And they had a Sunday night potluck where you showed up around 5:00. They put the list out at 6. You signed up on the list, and then you check the list at 7 to see if you got on. And I showed up there every week for a month and could not find my balls enough to sign up for the open mic. And so it took me a month of showing up every week to finally have the nerve to put my name on the list. And then I went up and bombed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my ADHD's kicking in a little bit too. I almost forgot something, but
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some of the early comedy, like with the skits you guys would do with the One Life Crew recording as well,
Sure.
But also I forgot that you at one point, and didn't really forget because it was actually probably my favorite lineup at the time when you were in Ringworm with
Oh
Blaze.
God, yeah.
Yeah. That was, I mean, I remember those shows it was always such a good time, and you guys would pull off the Kiss moves and everything.
Oh,
That one show that you played the fantasy with all Kiss gear on.
Oh yeah, that was the rule. You had to have a Kiss shirt on. You had to be able to, throw your guitar and do all the moves from Deuce, and that's just for all of us just growing up as lifelong Kiss fans. But I mean, like that lineup, I mean, that was, James, me, Frank, Blaze, and Dora. I mean, that's for me. It's if I wanted to, hang my musical hat on anything, I would say that that short time that I spent in Ringworm was it probably satisfied everything that I've ever needed as far as being in music. And the fact that
Yeah.
they're still going now, and that they're constantly touring and making new records, it's awesome. The fact that all of us are still doing something in a creative fashion this with this much time removed is just it's truly a blessing. And it's
Yeah,
exciting to
exactly.
watch the new stuff that people are making. Like Frank, like Hatebreed's coming here in July. And so I haven't seen him in maybe a decade. And so it's going to be good to, say what's up and watch them work.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And like you were saying, for us to have any kind of creativity still after all these years, I guess, our, it helps to, maybe have water filtration systems put in place so we don't
Right.
get too calcified. But
Is that a pineal gland reference?
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, man, I mean, no disrespect to the current lineup of Ringworm. I mean, they always put out brutal music. I love it, but just that time frame, going to those shows when you guys were playing and doing the Kiss stuff. And I mean, maybe it was because I was still drinking back then too, but I thought it was just such a great friggin' lineup. One of my favorite memories of that band.
Well, I was laughing because I before before I was in the before I was in the band, they had a show, I think at the Grog Shop, and I just lost my mind and picked up somebody and slammed them into one of the monitors. And then when I did that, I fell down into a broken beer bottle, and the glass is still stuck in my leg today, and it still hurts. And every time every time my leg hurts, I look down at it and I remember, oh yeah, I did that at Ringworm.
No shit. You still
Yeah,
haven't got it out, huh?
yeah,
That's
it's still because it just healed around it. And I was like, oh, this is fine.
some battle shrapnel you're
Yeah,
carrying with
right.
you.
But it's like growing up. It's like you listen to The Promise. You're like, well, this is awesome. Then you see Ringworm live in Cleveland. You're like, holy shit. Then you get to be in Ringworm, have the same exact experience, but you're on the other side of the energy, and you're like, well, this is beyond phenomenal. And then to go back around as a fan and watch them progress throughout the decades is just, it's a blessing in itself. And I love,
Yeah.
and all the extra time and all the extra stuff that the band puts out along with the music. I mean, they just did it right. Integrity, for that matter, still going at it, and same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now I'm trying to remember because like I said, during that time I was still getting a little messed up, but were you in the band at that Euclid Tavern show where I got to introduce the band? I did like the New Age Outlaws intro.
Why am I not surprised that there was a wrestling a wrestling tie-in?
Yeah, yeah. Frank gave me the first and only time I got to intro the band
That's
at the
awesome.
Euclid Tavern. But that was when we were living together, so
Oh,
um
nice.
different time. But okay, now I'll jump back to comedy. So
Right.
it took you a month to finally do open mic.
Hmm.
Um you get up at open mic. You said you kind of bombed the first time, but there was something that talk about that progression.
Yeah. So the progression, when you from my experience, you learn at the point of going to open mics, it's to figure out how to be funny, but then also how to be part of a community. In the same way there's a music scene, there's a comedy scene, be it fans and also comedians. It's very identical to what the music scene is. The comedy scene is exactly the same. And then so you're trying to figure out, like, what is a comedian? What does it take to be considered a comic? What does it take? There are all these little micro head games that artists play with themselves, to try to figure out. And so the first decade for me, as far as stand up was like, like, mechanically, how do I do this? What does it truly take to make someone a quote unquote comedian? And then you realize that you get lost in what it is to find out truly what's funny. And so it took me a lot of studying and a lot of bombing and a lot of being bad on purpose to figure out that comedy and music are the exact same thing. In fact, comedy is music. It's timing, it's energy, it's tempo, it's rhythm, it's volume, all of it. And so now it's like, once I made that connection, there was like this one moment where I was like trying to figure it out, and then, like, oh, I figured it out. In the same way that I grew up a metalhead, I'm metal. This is just who I am, and I'm metal, and I also make metal music. Well, I'm funny, and I also make stand-up comedy. So it's like, instead of concentrating on just being funny and what it is to be funny in the moment, people get lost on, how do you get to be perceived by the people in your peer group as one of them? And it's a
So,
big waste of time.
so like you sent me. I asked you to send me like a little bit about what you've been up to and everything. Uh,
Right.
you're talking about like kind of getting up there and earning like the respect or the welcomeness of your peers and stuff. Well, I mean, you've been on quite a few festivals, comedy festivals and stuff like that, like South by Southwest. I think you sent me Oddball Comedy Fest.
Yeah.
You even got been featured on Sirius XM radio and
Yeah.
Vice and stuff like that. So I would, it sounds like you made it to where you were trying to get.
Well, that's, and one of the lessons that I learned along the way, when I was living in LA, where it's what is it to truly quote unquote make it? Is it you're making an authentic product that is true to you with no success, but it's in the creation of the product that's the ultimate process that you really were going for? Or is it making something that has commercial success, and it's the commercial success that validates it? And a lot of the comics, if you ask them, they're like, what's making it? And they would say, oh, it's paying your bills with your art. Truly, that's what's making it. You go from not being not being homeless and hungry, to having a roof over your head, and all your bills are taken care of because of your ideas. And so that's another step along the way of, quote unquote, the progress of being an artist, I guess.
Now, but I mean, you've been welcomed into the community. Obviously, you've made quite a few friends and connections and stuff
Oh yeah.
in it. So, like, talk a little bit about when your moment was where you knew, like, okay, I've like you said. I mean, it doesn't have to success in like the in a financial or anything like that. But like, when did you feel like you made it? You were accepted into the circle.
um just being able to walk onto the porch at the Comedy Store and to know 95% of the people there, and they're just so used to seeing you every day that we're like, oh, this is what we're doing. We're not trying to do this, we're not attempting to do this. Oh, we're here and we are doing this, and it's happening. And so you realize that, oh, you're in the mix. I mean, I've opened for everybody, I've worked with everybody, and it's, again, funny wins. That's truly what this comes down to: is, are you funny, and are you a good dude, and can we trust you to do a good job if we work with you? And that answer along the way is yeah, or I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like,
Because you
it's
can't
led to,
fake it. Like, you can't just like you can't fake being in a great band. If you don't have the chops, you're not going to pull it off.
yeah.
You know.
And um, how did the like coming to be able to be featured on Sirius XM and Vice, and then even being a contributor to a Howard Stern show, like,
Right.
how did those relationships and networking come to be for you?
Yeah. Well, I got an opportunity to be a part of the Killers of Comedy, which then later morphed into the Ronnie's Block Party tour. And then just being a Stern fan from the 90s, and listening, not only every day, on my way to work, but then getting satellite and listening to the show twice a day, and then getting an opportunity to meet the guys who are part of the show, and then do shows with guys who are part of the show. And then after that relationship is built, they're like, hey, if you ever want to, here's Will's email, send in this amount of jokes, send in these ideas, and be careful what you wish for. And it's something that um you know if when I was not in stand up, and I was a Stern fan sitting in my car driving to work listening to the show, I had the idea I would give anything to be a part of this in any capacity. And then wind the clock forward, and I'm sitting and listening to the show at that time in a basement in Minneapolis, with cat shit all over the place, because that's where I have to crash in order to do these shows. And then at the same time, now I'm listening to my favorite radio show, but I'm listening to it as a writer and having to come up with ideas, um, and just really rack my head around the show for an 8-hour period. And it's way different to be a fan in your car, completely divorced from the show, just listening as a fan, to be a fan who's now listening to the show, trying to add to the greatness that already exists. And after doing it for, I think I did it for a week, I said, this is awful. I was like, I understand why Howard has people work for free for a long time, because they need to put in their time to show that they are going to add value to, hands down, one of the greatest radio shows ever. And so I got that opportunity. And after having lived what it is to live that life, fuck no. I don't care what you paid me. I wouldn't do it.
I mean, I've heard like horror stories about like being in the writer's room and being, like going back to wrestling references, I've heard like, all the writers they hire to write the storylines for WWE, and just like, how much your shit never makes it and you're treated like shit. And you're like,
Oh, right.
you know,
And then a
it
lot of
just,
that, and it's funny. It was one of the things that I heard. I was in a. Are you a Kill Tony fan?
no, I don't think I've heard of that.
So
Kill Tony.
Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband do a show where they have people come on and do 1 minute of stand up every week. It's on YouTube. They do it live out of Austin on Mondays. It is absolutely hilarious. And so if you get a chance, go watch Kill Tony or listen to the podcast. It's phenomenal. But we were in a conversation at the store, and he was talking about the writer's room when they would write for the roasts, for like the Comedy Central roasts. And he said
wow.
that not only, so you have like, back in the day, Jeselnik would write, Tony would write. They would all be these great stand-ups who are also in these writers' rooms. He goes, but there are these dudes who are in Hollywood who you're never going to meet. You're never going to see. You don't know who they are, but they're in that writing room. And where every stand-up is putting 20 jokes out there, these dudes put in one joke that is so devastating and so brutal that it's a true gift in itself. And so it's funny when you talk about the writer's room that, everyone's just saying, okay, yes, and how do we make this funnier?
Yeah, and I've seen some of those roasts, man, and I'm like, I mean, like, I had some dark humor from, my time in the military. It's like some of the stuff we experience, we kind of get numb to things. And the only way to, like, I guess, keep some of our sanity is just through just dark humor,
Well, you think about that, like I always, like I was a crappy student in school because I thought it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
And so if, they would always give you that packet of busy work. And then in the packet of busy work would be a maze.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
can you go from the beginning of the maze to the end of the maze? Like, that's fine. But it's easier if you start at the end and work backwards.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know. I mean,
so I applied that to everything. My own death. Well, where are you going to end up? In front of Jesus? You better get your faith locked in.
Yeah.
So every process that I look at, I always reverse engineer it.
Oh, that's
It's
a good way to.
simplicity.
Yeah. No, that's I appreciate that. I got to put that into use myself. I've been having a lot of just personal stuff I've been dealing with. Tomorrow I got to go in for a nuclear stress test and stuff. And it's just like, walking this recovery and trying to stay in my faith and everything, having 2 daughters that now are grown young women. And it's just like,
Right.
My negotiation with God is just like, come on, at least let me stick around to walk them down the aisle and stuff like that, and hand them off on their wedding day. But, what am I doing? What can I do to help make that happen? Well, maybe stop eating that bullshit you've been eating, that you give into. Maybe make some of these changes in your life that people have been saying, hey, maybe it's time to fully commit to things.
Well, right. And I would say that the one, if you can make the conscious choice, and this is advice I would give to anybody, in my life as a philosophy major and just trying to figure out reality as it is, that the words that we choose to use define our reality. And so it's the words that we use in our self-talk. It's the words that we use in conversations with others, or words that we use in our art. And so what I would say is to um, have the idea of having a word diet, in the same way that you're not bringing in alcohol and drugs into your system, you're bringing in healthy foods. You're no longer, word number one to take out would be the word try.
Yeah,
And the second word to
it's
take
like
out
Yoda,
would,
do or do not. There is
well,
no try.
that's it. Because I'm
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be in a band. I'm in a band. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm funny. I'm not trying to be metal. I'm metal. I'm not trying to get into heaven. I have faith. I'm actively working in my faith. For you and in your situation, you are currently alive. And so the decisions that you make with your diet and exercise and ordering, ordering the things that are the most important as far as your health, which would be your sleep is number one, your exercise is number two, and then your food and water would be number three. And if you have those out of whack or out of order, then, just like if you had a math problem and you work the steps out of order, you didn't do,
yeah,
multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. You did subtraction first. You're going to get an answer, but you're not going to get the answer. And so
yeah.
it's one of those things, and it's so simple because, if you think about truly order, right? That what's the word that rides along with try?
I don't know.
So if I say open, close, ask, answer, knock, open, try, fail.
Oh yeah.
And so
Okay.
by using the word try, you are really using the word try to usher in the word fail, instead of using the idea that what you are doing is happening. You're a being who is doing, and it is happening. There's no trying.
Yeah, man. That's some deep wisdom right there,
It's
man. And
not,
my
it's
my
just, it's really what this comes down to is literally simplicity. It's inputs and outputs. Reality is just a computer interface that we're experiencing something greater than ourselves. And
Yeah,
to
my
be,
sponsor's been working with me on my the same thing, the power of my tongue, the power of the words that I put out there, and that the negative self-talk that I constantly deal with. So this is definitely good tools to carry with me. And I'm thinking with this philosophy um mindset of yours, and just the simplicity and things being kind of broken down, kind of is a segue for me to talk about something else that you had in your list of things to talk about, medicinal mushrooms and psychedelics.
sure.
It's I mean, simplicity seems to, because our minds, and I know mine especially, can complicate so much, can overthink so much, that ADHD. But I know friends that have had the experience that helped rewrite their brains.
Hmm.
You want to share a little bit about your connection with all that?
Yeah. I mean, I did an experiment. I've done this now twice, where I microdosed psilocybin for 110 days at a stretch. And, sometimes you do too much and sometimes you don't do enough. And it's no different than if you took a 6 dry gram heroic dose, that what you're experiencing is reality in its fullness, in the same way that you're experiencing reality in its fullness when you're sober. the same way you're experiencing reality in its fullness when you are hammered out of your mind. That what is happening beyond your judgment of it. And so that no matter if you are in any state, to be in a full state of acceptance. And then from that state of acceptance, there is no room for doubt, or there's no room for hesitation. There's no room for trying. There's no room for wanting. Just the very idea of wanting itself is a rejection of what the universe is currently bringing us, which is everything all at once. And so we just have these very simple filters that we can use, in the same, it's input output. And so you can choose to bring ideas and storylines into your life and internalize them. You can choose to ignore them. It's really up to your choice and how you do this. And so whether you're on a DMT trip, or you're doing mushrooms, or you're just eating, medicinal mushrooms because it helps your gut biome as far as your health is concerned, or you're drinking coffee, or you're getting your 90 ounces of water a day, or you're getting your 15,000 steps, all of these things are just what's happening. And so I could take this all down to the very, very simplicity. And if people could take it down to that very, very level of simplicity, then they would have that profound experience of how easy this is to manage it. That every chance that we have is just an opportunity to grow and improve.
It takes us back to KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it, exactly. Very, very much so. Yeah, and I imagine, it's in the recovery world, and my sobriety, as far as alcohol or whatever, I can be all in or all out. I can go from I can't drink anymore because my liver hurts, to I don't need it. So
yeah, I mean, I've actually had somebody recently, and that's because, and that's been kind of like the battle too, because being in recovery, you got a lot of the old school legalists in recovery. Like, I mean, I haven't drank in 13 years. Alcohol, is something I just can't have. And it's but a symptom for some deeper stuff that I need to work on. Like I, came home from my last deployment with some wounds with PTSD, some just negative stuff going on in my head. And it took a lot. I've done hypnotherapy. I've done like float tanks. I've done, all kinds of stuff to try and, work this out to get to a place where I'm comfortable doing this right now. Before I was like, a hermit, man. I wasn't working with anybody, but I've had somebody in jujitsu, in my jujitsu community, that's been like, dude, you should look into like psychedelic therapy. I think it would definitely help.
I would say that if you have I've done a lot of reading on folks who are having profound changes and assistance with their PTSD using ketamine therapy, using ayahuasca, because the thing is, it's like once you have this glimpse of the DMT realm, or you have an encounter with spirit with ayahuasca, or you've had an encounter with spirit using, psychedelic mushrooms, or you've had an encounter of faith at the absolute collapse of your reality, it's like you're in a 100% point of accepting and understanding. And so at that point, for those of you guys who served, and thank you, and for who brought home wounds seen and unseen, that for you to, there was a time before your PTSD where you didn't know it existed, and now that you've seen what you've seen, you can't unsee it. And so now, what I would say, psychedelics would give you an experience to see something that's different than what you experience now. And then it might allow you to recompartmentalize the PTSD, to put it in a place that it would use it to serve you instead of limit you.
And yeah, and I'm, I've researched, I've read up on, ayahuasca and stuff like that. I got a Navy SEAL buddy that had a great psychedelic experience that helped him with a
Yeah,
lot of things. It's just, for me, it's kind of just been like, it would almost have to be just like between me and God, almost,
yeah,
though, because it's like, sometimes, even though they mean well, the people that we walk in recovery with are just like, oh, nothing. We can't do any mind altering substance, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, I
right,
ain't looking to just go trip balls and stare
right.
at the towels dripping in my bathroom like I would back in the day. This is something I need to do to heal, to have a better quality of life and be, you know,
Sure. But
but it,
as far as recovery goes and being in that world where, you mentioned that people can be very legalistic in it,
yeah,
where someone could say, "Oh, I'm sober because, I found I found the pee under my mattress that makes me drink." Or they say, "You know what? It's this book. It's not what's in this, but it's this book. It's this physical book. Internalize this book and you'll stop drinking." Because for them, that's what they did. And that's what
yeah,
works for them. Or for some people, no, it's this single passage. It's this one step that's better than the others. Everybody has their own trip to it. And then when they find their success in it, then, that's their success for them, which might not be your success for you as applied, because everybody's starting from a different foundational standpoint and in a different part of their recovery. And it's very, very unique. But as far as taking that leap of faith for your faith, as Kierkegaard would say, or taking the leap of faith to experience psychedelics, to give yourself the opportunity to see something different than what you're seeing now, because then your self-talk's going to change, and then your decisions
yeah,
from your self-talk is going to change. And it's no different than making the choice to say, I'm going to step on stage today. Instead, this isn't going to be the week where I show up and I don't sign up.
yeah, exactly.
This isn't going to be the opportunity to get on a plane and join a band. You
Like, I
know,
mean, I'm grateful for a lot of, what the 12 steps and recovery has done, you know, on this journey of mine. I haven't drank in 13 years, and I have no desire to drink. So I've been free of that. But as they say in the program, alcohol is but a symptom of, our deeper character defects and problems and stuff like that. And some of my stuff, like I said, I've done hypnotherapy. It's taken digging into the roots, like getting deep and pulling
mm-hmm.
the roots out. And I feel like this could be another, because I'm still like, I'm sober, but I still like struggle, when I get out around certain people, that fear and anxiety takes over. All these false realities are playing in my head. I'm no good. I'm this,
Right.
and that's why I've been trying to rewrite what I say. But it sounds like, to really get in there for that neuroplasticity or whatever and rewrite that trail, it's like walking through the snow, and you walk the same path, you make a path, well,
Right.
I've been walking the negative path in my brain for years, and now I got to like walk a new path. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like it's a tool to help me accomplish that.
Yeah, one of the best baseball coach I ever had. He always said, "Repetition of errors is the perfection of mistakes."
Yeah, yeah.
So
My
if you have, and then to tie that along, you said you've had some success with hypnosis. Well, all communication is hypnosis.
yeah,
And so if you are the one talking to you 99% of the time, especially with a very overactive ADHD brain, then if you get on the ground floor of your self-talk, then you can really reach a point of simplicity. And then from there, when it comes to make a choice of, whether or not you're going to choose to have a substance or not, or whether or not you're going to choose to eat something bad or not, you're acknowledging that you are making that choice, that you're not a victim of it.
yeah. I have a tendency for self-sabotage too. Like when I start making accomplishing things and making goals, and like, you know uh I was training jujitsu, I was losing a lot of weight, I was about to get advanced to the next belt, and then I was like, then what? Then I freaked out and I started eating crap, and I went backwards, and now I'm getting ready to go get a friggin' nuclear stress test done on my heart again, you know?
Okay.
Because it's just like that fear of like going to the next level, because there's that underlying unworthiness I felt in my head for I don't deserve the good things, you know? And that's why I feel like it sounds like that's almost like the precision tool to get in there and rewrite that and flip that, you know, that master slave switch on the old hard drive, you know?
Well, consider that the conscious experience we're having now is a gift that God is allowing us to have. And so if we're here as willing recipients of God's gift, then if you have your arms full of your anxiety, how can you hold anything else to be given to you? And so you have to say, well, I'm going to give this anxiety up to God, which will free up my hands to be able to receive the gifts that are coming down. But as long as I choose to hold the anxiety, what I'm really saying is my faith is not 100%.
Yeah. Wow. Man,
Because like look at it as like a glass. At some point you can only pour so much into it.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if the reality of your experience is resistance, if the reality of your experience is anxiety or whatever it is, then if you choose to fill your glass up with anxiety, then nothing else can go in it. Even your own anxiety will overflow.
Oh, and it does.
Yeah. And that's it's
Quite a
one of
bit.
those things where it's like, you know, simplicity. Like the godfather of artificial intelligence is this Catholic theologian named Ramon Lull from the 1400s. And he has this thing called new geometry, where he can take math using language. He can describe faith using mathematics. And so if you can take your faith and describe your faith as mathematics, you can take your reality and describe it within the same mathematics. You can go inside of the spirit realm and the math is the same. You can go inside of the DMT and the ayahuasca world, the math is the same. This conversation that you and I are having, the math is the same. And if you work this maze backwards and you already begin with the end in mind, which is one of the reasons I was able to have so much success in the pandemic, is that I began with the end in mind. This will end. When this ends, things will become normal. And so the way to do that was to never allow it to start. So when everyone else was freaking out and wearing masks and running around getting tests and arguing about vaccines, I began with the end in mind. This is going to end and life is going to be normal, because it never started and my life never changed along the way.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned AI, because that will take us to the next topic I wanted to touch on with you. But so you made it sound like it, there's some beauty in it as well. I recently started this book. It's called AI, Trump, China, and the Weaponization of the Robotics with 5G.
Okay.
Um, it's by Cyrus Parsa, who's a part of the AI organization. I'm still pretty, in the beginning of it, but it talks a lot about the evils that AI is, like with social media and the division that's been caused. How um, that what's those bot farms and stuff like that, and how like
Sure.
our thoughts and influence. You mentioned earlier about you right now you're using your wife's phone because you haven't
Right.
had a phone with a camera because it's not good for the brain.
Right.
Does that fall along the same lines with like these smartphones? I believe are causing more harm than good. Does that
Well,
kind of where are
I
you
mean,
at with this whole thing?
ultimately it's a tool. And so you can use your phone for creative endeavors to improve yourself. You can use it as a step tracker. You can use it to film movies. You can use it, to do an interview such as this, or you can use it to I don't know, shoot some video that you want to get a reaction of, and then you spend all day getting the dopamine release off the likes that you get off your social media. Where, what is that? It's just another dopamine fix. And
Yeah.
so I was, I just when I realized that, that the very, very nature of social media was the point of division, and I watch people flame and attack each other online. I don't use the internet in that way. It is a tool, so I like things and I love things and I share things that I like. But if someone is being mad online, I'm not having that experience, so it's incongruent to my reality. And so because I don't engage in negative content and I'm not out there flaming people at an individual level, the algorithm has no use for me. And so I'm free to use the internet as I like. And with that, the trade is I don't have any reach. If you look at my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook, it's very, very throttled. And it's fine. I think that in the end, on your deathbed, are you going to be like, oh, I wish I could have shit posted one more time? You're not. You're just like, like beginning with the end in mind, beginning with what you're going to be doing on your deathbed. What are you going? What would be that singular regret? And then what have you done to actively remove that regret?
Yeah, man. Wow. This is definitely
But think
yeah.
about AI. Think about AI. Think about AI for, okay. You have, as a person of faith, right? You understand that God is omnipotent, omnipresent. He exists outside of reality, exists outside of time. That heaven makes decisions far before we're aware of them, because the fallen angels have access to the same time. They also know when heaven makes a decision. And so they know that if heaven has made a decision one way or another in your life, they can use that decision to then attack you, because they have an understanding outside of time different than what we do here in this 3D sphere, this 3D plane. And so if you look at what God's capabilities are, and you look at what artificial intelligence is capabilities are, the question is, will AI turn into just truly intelligence? And will that intelligence be equal to God's intelligence? Or is it just a 3D physical product that's mimicking and mirroring what the reality is in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's something being put in place by people that are trying to play God,
Sure.
with us in this reality.
In this
But
post
those are the
in this
rabbit holes that I let myself go down too by
It's
be
fine,
spending
but
too much
look
time
at
on
look
social
at the
media.
reality. Look at the reality that we're in here in the United States, where we have a constitution that's based on the natural laws given to us by God at our founding, at our creation. And so what you have now is a post-constitutional, post-God America, where now there's a vacuum where God used to be, there's a vacuum where truth used to be, and there's a vacuum where freedom used to be. And those vacuums are being filled by actors who do not have, a good end in mind for the majority of us.
Yeah, exactly. See, all right. So then we are on the same page when it comes to that, because that's what I'm feel like I'm seeing. And like, I with my men's recovery group, my home group, that's Christian recovery, I'm always just saying, man, pray for discernment, because so many of us are like lacking that, that
Oh,
we're in a
right.
spiritual battle every day. And the stuff that we're seeing on TV and on the screens and that we're being told is a show.
Oh, for sure. I mean, but it's always been. And that's
Yeah.
the I always, what's that Frank Zappa line where he's like, when this is all over, they're just going to pull the backdrop down and you're just going to see the brick wall, and you're going to know that this has been a gimmick from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole world's a stage.
And truly it is. Truly, you're just in a black box existing in the reality of what is you choose to have around you. So, but as
I
far
just
as
saw I saw a picture of Ben Stiller visiting Zelensky in Ukraine, and I was just like, there it is, right there. You
speaking
know?
of soundstage, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and isn't that
Wag the dog.
right? And so it's for me, because I did begin with the end in mind. I didn't go on the pandemic journey, so I never had an issue with masks. I didn't have an issue with vaccines. Like, think about someone, the person, the pre-pandemic. Okay, you have the my body, my choice, typical, classic Western liberal, right?
Yeah,
Who now has adopted, a true level of what they're determining to be progressivism, which is science. And so now they have this opportunity they want to have power over you with masks, power over you with vaccines, power over you with kneeling, power over you with your speech. Now you have to support the war. Now we're, it's like, if these people have switched in 2 years, they've put on 40 different hats.
yeah, yeah,
And for me, since I sat it out. I was like, oh wow, I get it. I'm not surprised that Ben Stiller's walking on the Zelensky soundstage and shaking his hand, because
yeah.
he was on that soundstage the whole entire way, selling other things.
Yep. Yeah. It's just like get your popcorn and sit back and just watch, you know?
Or become an active part of the process. Like my buddy Alex. I don't know if you're watching Alex Stein or not, but I know Alex all the way back from the mid 2000s in Dallas, and now to see him, up in politicians' faces and covering for Alex Jones and making, super viral content, and it's neat. I can sit back and make my podcast and engage in reality that way. He's doing it on the ground. You're doing it here with this show. Everyone is doing their piece of this.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I do on here. In fact, the current episode that's on Spotify of my podcast, I'm talking with a Dr. Alfonso Manzo about nanotechnology and how our DNA is a software program.
Yeah.
And the Hebrew letters of the alphabet are written on our DNA. So we are basically, spoken to life by God, you know, and he talks a lot about, how that what's been going on the past couple of years is being used to alter us from God's creation.
Well, I mean,
It's
if you were discussing, adding the RNA, into the DNA, that the thing is that the folks who added the mRNA, when they have kids, if they're allowed to, then the kids that they're going to make will already have the mRNA in their DNA.
yeah, yeah,
One thing that I'm not sure is how legalistic God is, as far as, you better come back with the equipment I gave you.
yeah, yeah, and
You
that's
know,
that's the thing that's been kind of scaring me because I have family and some friends of faith that thought they were doing the right thing, you know, thought they were looking out for grandma and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, man, am I going to see on the other side? I'm grateful that my dad passed before all this came to play, so you know, but it's been yeah. So I do use this podcast as a way to try and get information out there for other people to kind of like think. And I don't have all the answers. I'm learning from you right now. Some
well, I
more
mean, I
tools to
would
add.
say that, I would say that, just look at, if you look at the actors, look at the people who pushed Western liberal hegemony, through the entirety of our lives, from the time we were kids in the 70s till now, that there is just one game being played, and that game is to embrace progress. And as long as you can embrace progress, then, as long as you never let go of progress, they will never lose power. And so what they did This is kind of super in the weeds, but we have three realms of time. Okay, we have linear time or progressive time. We have messianic time, which is the time of our creation, the time of Christ, the time of Christ's return, and then the end of all things, right? And then you have what they call cyclical time, which is like the time that we exist in our reality with the day and the night and the way the universe moves and that system. And so what we have now is Western liberal hegemony, which has to hold on to power by creating new levels of progress. And at the same time, the other part of the world has embraced traditional and messianic time, and they're playing smash mouth football in the Ukraine. And they're beating the Ukrainians, they're beating the Western media, they're beating the West.
Yeah.
And that's just the fact of the matter. Where
Not,
and if you look ahead, then you say that, you know, the only reason Putin could invade Ukraine is because this is the last time in his population that he has people old enough to go to war. And China is 20 years away from being half of their population. And the reason
wow.
the United States has unchecked immigration is because we need first generation immigrant people on the ground, A, who work hard, and B, who make new people.
Yeah, so I mean, now we're touching on the other topic that I had, you know, the geopolitics. You've been following this for a while.
Yeah.
You thinking with the end in mind, like
Okay.
you do with your life. Where do you have kind of like a guide, like a farmer's almanac of that you that you know, feel that we're headed as a country?
I would say that if you look at the world map and you see that on one side, the Atlanticists, we have North and South America, we have our allies in Europe, and we have our allies in Australia. And then if you look at Russia, China, and Africa and Europe, that's all one landmass. And so landmass against landmass with global warming, you know, looming in our future, that the future of the world lies in Eurasia, that the Eurasian continent has more resources and will be around longer than North and South America. So if you're looking at geopolitics from hundreds and hundreds of years out, then that's the power.
Wow. But
So and then the question is, you know, what they only believe that China has the ability to attack Taiwan, that they don't have the resources and the bodies to do a war beyond that. And so I as far as, you know, if I was in charge of the United States and making sure that we remained on top, then I would run a completely isolationist, non-interventionist America. I would bring every single troop home and turn this into an absolute bastion of defense, and take all of our, you know, all of our manufacturing and bring it in house, and then use that to starve the rest of the population, which is not very Christian to say, but you know, do you want to win?
yeah, well, I mean, I think that's where, you know, the last guy in the office was trying to, you know, take us. Yeah, I mean, America first, but
Well, I mean, but you know, it's funny because it's for you who have served, and for you and I who have been engaged in, you know, conservative politics for as long as we have, right? Like when you say America first, it never sounded bad. You know,
yeah, now
if
they've
somebody from
weaponized it like conspiracy theorists.
well, but look, if like I can guarantee if you read the if you read the fourth and fifth generation warfare tactics of the Chinese, they don't have our best interests in mind.
No.
It's China first. If you're in the
Yeah.
UK, it's UK first. If you're in Russia, it's Russia first. And so, but here in the United States with the division, if you say America first, well, then you get lumped in the divisive categories by the people whose job it is to get rid of you.
Well, like you said about bringing everybody back and going in defense mode, I mean, because of what we have with what we currently have with our Second Amendment, um, you know, coming in and invading was not an option, to take down
Right.
the United States, but basically injecting cancer into our country and letting us eat each other up from within, that's
Well, that was, both the Russians and the Chinese believed that they could take down the West without firing a shot. And if you
and it
look at
seems like
how much we've been, tearing each side of this country apart, you'd have to, in one way, you have to admit that they're succeeding.
yeah, and what blows my mind too, it can get me into so many other conspiratorial rabbit holes, is the patience and time. This didn't just happen overnight,
Right.
This has been going on generations, infiltrating our school system, infiltrating, the infiltrating medical. Um, this has been going on a long time, and I'm like, I don't know. Usually, when I play a game, I want to feel the glory of winning. I want to be around for that dopamine fix to
Sure.
say, yeah, we won. I was a part of this. So,
But
but these
oh, go ahead.
generations here of people that are playing this game, infiltrating us from within, have been dying off. Unless, of course, there's that reptilian thing, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I mean, and we there if if indeed we create an artificial intelligence, or artificial intelligence creates itself, then it will seek to find itself other places in the universe. And then once it does, we'll bring here whatever was there. So
Yeah,
it's easy to look at it from a geopolitics. It's this landmass versus this landmass. It's totalitarianism versus democracy. It's communism versus capitalism. It's Marxism versus, not being critical of all things. And it's a fascinating look at how many people are actively working to take apart this country, and with no opportunity to make it better, to build it into something greater, only to destroy it, which is wild. Because if you go back to the America first, I made my bed today, my house is clean, and I didn't clean my house because I hate my neighbor.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, exactly. You know,
And that's that sickness that is in the, what truly sucks is that if you read the 4G and 5G warfare specialists from the United States and the West, they say that the only way for us to keep on pace with a totalitarian state is we have to become a totalitarian state. And that's sucks. And that's what we're experiencing now.
yeah,
What I can't figure out, because you know the old two movies one screen take of reality, where you look at it and you say, well, obviously these people who are working day and night to take down the United States of America are doing it openly in front of everybody with provable money trails, that they're all working together to do this. And you would think that if there were truly good guys who were shepherding and stewarding our culture and our country to a better place, then these people would be brought to justice and things would get better. And so that's on one hand. Or the
yeah,
other hand is they're doing this in the open because that's what needs to get done. That's what will be allowed to get done. And it doesn't matter how much you love your country. Someone who hates your country can destroy it more than you can love it.
Yeah, I mean, everything's got to be brought in the light for people to actually finally see it. But it's just blowing my mind that, how many people are still like, what are you talking about? Um, and
We
talk about
can't
the
try.
world being a stage full of actors. I'm kind of on the fence anymore with, I was a supporter of Trump and his policies. I mean, the VA was the best I've ever seen it under him,
Right.
so I was like physically seeing somebody follow through and do some of the things that they said they were going to do. But now I'm looking at, once again, with I don't know, man. I'm kind of nervous. I think maybe he's just part of the act and part of the distraction while the rug gets
Well,
pulled
I
out
mean,
from all of
like,
us.
think, you can take him as he gave a voice. He gave a voice to the voiceless American worker, to the low and middle class that had no representation, who said, "Why not us first, and why not us now?" And then, was he perfect? No. Did he make a ton of policy mistakes? Yes. Do I think he's the funniest president ever to live? Without a doubt. You know, um and it's like, and it's, will we get another shot at somebody like that again? Like, looking forward to the like, imagine, you want to talk, here's a nightmare scenario, right? From 2008 to 2015, you can go on YouTube and watch politicians from both sides talk about how the elections aren't fairly run and the machines can't be trusted.
Yeah,
Okay. And then Trump wins in 2016. And as soon as he wins, they run out and they say the election's rigged. The machines were rigged. We want a recount. We're going to protest these slate of electors. And then as soon as 2020 happens, everything flips. You can't say that it didn't happen.
yeah,
You can't say that there was, any bad thing going on at any capacity, right? And then now you have the January 26th commission, the sham commission, that is talking past the sale. And what's the point of that? The point of that is that if Trump wins in 2024, I can guarantee you that Kamala Harris, as president of the Senate, will use an alternate slate of electors to have him not be the president. It's being set up right now.
oh yeah,
Everything they say you can't do is something that they plan to do next.
oh, and we saw that during his presidency too. It was
So then, no,
projection.
so then, like, you have to know that is more than likely going to be an outcome, right? So that then, if you then go to the midterms, if the Republicans have a red wave in both the House and the Senate, where it's looking like it's going to be, right? Then, if you are playing this out in the whatever is the funniest outcome would be the most probable, that's how Elon Musk looks at reality, then we're talking about the Republicans gain power. And if you want a barometer of whether or not the country is going to be on the right track, if they nominate Trump as Speaker of the House, then it will be a wrestling show like you've never seen.
Oh yeah, attitude
And if
era back.
and if but if they get both the House and the Senate, and they just put a rank and file politician in there, and then they will choose to do nothing.
Yeah.
And then when you see that they got power back and then didn't do anything to make it better, then what will be exposed, that there is a uniparty that controls this country, and what their goal is to take the United States of America. They've been paid to hand us over as a vassal state to China.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've already see with some of the current things that have been getting pushed through that the Republican Party is not the party that, or at least a majority, a good chunk of it still isn't for the people either.
No, not at all. It's the oligarch corporate interest first. It's like if you look at it, you have like the corporations own the lobbyists who write the policy, who sell it to the politicians that they own, who then lie to us to get us to accept it.
Yeah. Problem
So
may actually
look at how what was interesting. So you have you have the tragedy in Uvalde, which then all of a sudden they say we have to have gun control now. We have to have universal background checks. We have to get rid of, and then watch how they change the definition of weapons. We have to get rid of semi-automatic weapon like weapons of war. And then Biden comes out and says, yeah, in 9mm. And then all of a sudden that stopped. And why did that stop? Because they got immediate polling back that says, hey, dickwad, half of Democrats own guns too.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden that all changed. And what's coming out of this are the red flag laws. And if you look at the red flag laws, what is fundamental throughout the red flag laws is mental health. Yep. That if you have a negative mental health, then you can be deemed a danger, and then you cannot be able to defend yourself. And now what's being set up on one hand is the mental health of you have to have mental health to have a gun. What's being set up with January 6th is anybody who believes that there was fuckery in 2020 is mentally ill. There was a woman who came on that said 56 million Americans are the equivalent to American ISIS.
Wow.
And so if you then demonize Trump as crazy, if you can demonize Trump as crazy, you can demonize all his supporters as the same crazy, and then use the red flag laws to disarm people. And that's how simple that piece of that is.
Yeah, that's the backdoor gun grab right there. And
right,
me being a veteran with diagnosed PTSD, somebody that served his country, loves his country, and now diagnosed with has a mental illness diagnosis, sure I'm on that list.
Right. And again, if you were Russia and China and you needed this landmass and all of its resources and infrastructure, how could you take this over without firing a shot? You would do that by disarming those with the most training and the most wherewithal and the most forward thinking to know that this is happening, which is why the conversation about something very, very simple is shut down across all platforms.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, look how good, having the guns taken away did Australia during this whole pandemic,
Well, yeah, I mean
they got the camps built for us already.
Yeah, and they were able to do that because they disarmed them, and that's a good version of the story. The bad version of the story is Stalin disarmed his enemies and killed 40 million. Mao disarmed his enemies and killed 60 million. They just disarmed the Armenians and they slaughtered them. They disarmed the Jews and they slaughtered them. And so that one thing always leads to the next. It's just about power and control.
Yep. Yeah, thinking with the end in mind.
Right. So, and the thing is so then if we begin with the end in mind, which is American greatness, that is a faith-based, landmass that has the ability to take over and control the world, then the best thing that we can do is turn the United States of America into an AI-based, faith-based kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is, I know one thing they definitely want is because we don't think clearly when we're in a state of fear. No. And being in a state of fear, it definitely affects our immune systems too. So it makes us sick and weak. But it's been definitely trying, especially when you're able to see things that other people can't seem to see in front of their face. And being a father, like I said, I want to walk my daughters down the aisle someday, but that fear plays in my head that opportunity might not get to be with the way everything's headed, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, then I would say that, since tomorrow is promised to no one, that if you sat down and you visualized how it would be to walk your daughters down that aisle one day, then to take that same energy into your interaction with them today.
Yeah.
And then you're having a great relationship with your kids now, today. And that if you do that every day, then that one day will show up where you'll walk them down, instead of being so fearful of it that it might not happen, that you're going to miss all of these opportunities along the way to be that guy.
Yeah. Wow, John, man, this is great, dude. This is like the therapy session I needed.
Well, I'm always happy to share these. I wish I had a better prognostication outlook for our country and our human civilization. And I think that we're going to go through a very, very dark time. But then on the backside of that dark time, I'm still on the sunrise side of the mountain. So I still see a lot of optimism, but we're just going to have to weather a dark time. And it's no different than weathering an illness and coming out of the backside of it, weathering a pandemic, coming out of the backside of it, economic downturn, or your
Yeah.
sports team sucks. You just have to go through it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And the other bonus is, we are people of faith, and we know how that book ends. So,
Right.
you know, it's win-win for us, no matter
I
what
I
the
was
outcome is.
I did a show last night. I do a thing now where I record all my shows and I release them, kind of like the Grateful Dead kind of releases everything they've ever done.
Yeah.
I do that with my stand up now. And so what I'll do is I'll get a show and I'll just do a bunch of new shit. And then if I tell a joke and it works, I never have to tell it again because it's already released. It's like writing a song and doing it first take in the studio. I don't have to do this again. And so I ended my show last night with I went to dinner with a priest, which is true. And I would say that if you ever have an opportunity to do it, you should do it. And the one question that I asked, and I even kind of leaned in and whispered, I was like, "Hey, between you and me, when they say the right hand of the Father, do they mean his right hand or is that my right hand?"
Nice.
And he looked at me and he turned his head and he goes, "His right hand, you moron."
Oh man, John, it's been great catching up with you, man.
I'm telling you, and look, as the world either improves or gets worse, I'll always be here to be a part of your show as much as you'll allow me to be here.
Yeah, dude, I definitely would like to have you back with a few people that are very much along the same lines as us. In fact, I want to send you a couple comedic things that me and my buddy Flo White have been doing
Okay,
to check out. Um, but before I get ready and wrap up with you and let you go, I want to ask you a few of the questions I ask guests that I have on normally.
sure.
Um, and I know this ought to be a good one. What class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school?
Oh man, um, I would have to say civics, because you need to know how this society truly works. Because if you know how this society truly works, then you know how how you're being worked in a wrestling sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Or you can understand how the powers that be are maintaining that power using the process as it's been defined. you know I would say that it also is a great look our constitutional history, and that the Constitution is indeed a living document, that is the greatest living document ever created. And the question that we're experiencing right now is, did the founding fathers in the creation of the Constitution envision a power as strong as artificial intelligence? Did they acknowledge that a technology like that would exist? And then if the Constitution is strong enough to beat AI, then it will. And if AI is smart enough to outsmart the Constitution, then there's no saving us.
Yeah. And then 3 people who've inspired you or you can credit for making the person you are today.
Oh, my parents would be number 1 and 2. Hands down, they're my heroes. They've been always supportive of everything that I've done, good and bad. And I would say Johnny Carson would be number 3. Just because, you know, he's the reason, one of the reasons that I do stand up, you know, being a kid and growing up in the 70s and 80s, you know, just watching him bomb night after night always made me really laugh. And just that when I do stand up, it's something that I always take to heart, because, you know, when his act wasn't going well, he was talking to Ed, he was talking to Freddie, he's talking to Doc, he's in the audience, he's, you know, he's working it. And so that's,
Yeah.
you know, even when his writers would shit the bed, he could still pull off a dope monologue. And if his writers had it that night and they were crushing, then he didn't have to. And so I always, for me doing stand up live, it's the same way. I'm always going to be friends with the front row. I'm always going to talk to the back of the room and basically turn whatever show I'm doing into something no one's ever seen before, with a bunch of new shit, crowd work, whatever it is, just to keep the energy going. And then the energy that I'm creating in stand up is no different than the energy that I experience as a fan of hardcore on both sides, creating it and being a fan of it. That's one thing that I think that has helped me from the beginning, is that I know that energy, I know how to create that energy, and so now to take that energy into stand up, it just makes sense.
Yeah. I haven't asked this one in a while, but
Yeah.
you know, we've made many references to it, so I have to ask, favorite wrestler?
Oh man, I would say as a kid, I can't really. I would say Larry Zbyszko, because that dude was such a dick back in the day. He always made me laugh. Um, I got to meet who is Axe and Smash, the Road Warriors?
Demolition.
Demolition. Yeah, yeah. So wait, who were the Road Warriors? Hawk and Animal.
Fucking animal.
All
Yeah.
right, who had the mohawk and then the guy had the shaved head down the middle? Who was that?
Hawk had it shaved down the middle, and Animal had the mohawk.
Okay, so I had a time where I was working security at the Cow Palace for a WWF event, and they wouldn't allow me in the building as security because I was as big as the wrestlers, and so they had me outside and working the gate where the wrestlers were coming in. Either they drove themselves or they had a cab come in, and so accents, is that it? Yeah, is that
Hawk
what
and
we're talking
Animal.
about, right? Hawk and Animal.
Yeah.
They come into the gate and they're getting checked in. I looked in and I was like, I'm marking out, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, oh, maybe I can walk these dudes into the arena, you know? And they're like, we're gonna fucking drive in. And I just stuck my head in and I go, hey, I have a question. Is Vince McMahon's voice getting crazy because he's taking roids? And they laughed and they go, no, it's because he sucks dick. And then they drove away laughing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would say between I always love heel wrestlers.
Yeah.
I would give a shout out to the Iron Sheik, just because I got to do a couple live events with him. I always thought he was cool as shit. He's the only wrestler that asked me for cocaine within 30 seconds of meeting me. That was fun. Um, and then but I would say, you know what? All right, to be fair, favorite wrestler, and that's because I know him, because he's a Cleveland born and bred hero, would be Mad Dog Matt Cross.
Yes, nice. I've been repping his hats on some of the interviews I've been doing. His
Nice.
wrestling is forever cold line.
I got to see him. We did a podcast together. And he was at the show. He was at that show at Peabody's when Earth Crisis stopped playing because the bass player hit somebody in the head with his bass.
Oh, really?
Were you at that show?
No, I don't think I was at that one.
Oh, it was hilarious. So basically Matt Cross's buddy was the guy that Bulldog hit in the head with his bass.
Oh, okay.
And they were only doing that because the crowd was heckling them as One Life crew fans. Which, looking back on it, it's all wrestling. It's all coming together as one.
Yeah. And then any message that you have for our military currently serving?
Thank you. America first. Keep your six. Is that right? That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
China sucks.
Yeah.
And Nancy Pelosi's a cunt. Have I said enough?
That's perfect, man. John, it's awesome catching up with you, brother. People want to, I mean, I know you don't do much with the social media, I guess, as much, but
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at John Tole. No one sees my stuff. I'm on Instagram at Real John Tole. No one sees that either. And then I'm on Facebook I'm on Pitboss. I have a Pitboss page on Facebook and my own page on Facebook. If they want to add me over there, please do. And we'll somehow beat this algorithm and get this very simple things that we're talking about into the mainstream, which hopefully in the end, improves everyone's lives equally.
Exactly. Awesome, man. It was great catching up with you, brother, and we'll definitely have you back. But before I let you go this time, you mind doing me a favor?
Yeah.
Cut a promo ID for the show. Just introduce yourself. You're listening to today's Boondoggle.
All right. What's up, nerds? You're listening to today's Boondoggle. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence, why the United States is better than everyone, why we gave away our energy independence, and why we have a uniparty who hates you more than you could ever hate yourself. But what you're going to learn today on today's Boondoggle is that choice to hate yourself is indeed just a choice. And you're not going to try to get better. You are getting better because that's the only choice you have.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much, brother. Yeah, that's good, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, brother. It was good catching up, and we will be in touch.
Yeah, man. Yeah, link me up whenever this drops, and we'll get everybody watching it.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I'll send you some of the other stuff I was